Hello, my name is Bruce Webb and I am a pilot with Airbus Helicopters. Today we will perform the exterior pre-flight check of an H135 in accordance with the rotorcraft flight manual. Your helicopter may be fitted with different optional equipment. In such a case, you should refer to the respective flight manual supplement or maintenance manual to determine what additional pre-flight steps may be required. The complete pre-flight check shall be performed before the first flight of the day. Thereafter, an abbreviated check is required between each flight. The items which must be completed for this abbreviated check are identified with an asterisk next to each line item on the checklist. However, we must remain vigilant to local conditions. The extent and frequency of the pre-flight shall be increased, as necessary, to promote safe operation. The pre-flight check is not a detailed mechanical inspection. Instead, it is a comprehensive visual check of the helicopter to ensure that it is in condition for safe flight. In case of doubt, or should anything appear out of the ordinary, damaged, or exhibit signs of unusual or excessive wear, you shall bring your concerns to the attention of maintenance prior to flight. The examples shown during this video are there to raise awareness, which may help you detect anomalies during pre-flight. However, this video is not a substitute for comprehensive training. Before beginning your pre-flight, ensure that all the required materials and documents are present and current. This, of course, includes your checklist. Also, because distractions are often the source of error, ensure that the persons in the vicinity are aware that you're performing a pre-flight check and they should not interrupt you. Turn off your mobile phone and take any other steps necessary to eliminate distractions. Finally, remove any items on your person which may introduce FOD to the aircraft or the surrounding area. At the same time, I would encourage you to obtain a flashlight, clean rag, and perhaps a small mirror for use during the pre-flight. Remember, these items may also become FOD, so make certain that you have accounted for each one after you are finished with the pre-flight. Before we begin, we should define a couple of words which are used repeatedly. The first word is condition. We are looking to ensure that the item has no external damage and is properly seated or installed. The second word, secured, requires us to check that the lock wire, cotter pin, latch, or other means of securing is properly installed. Okay? Let's begin. So let's begin the pre-flight check. We have a checklist. Let's open it to exterior check. We'll begin at station number 1. Item 1 in station 1 is OAT sensors. On this aircraft, we have 2. We have one sensor located under the pilot's door, the starboard side of the aircraft. There's another located under the co-pilot's door or the port side of the aircraft. In both cases, we want to check them for condition and security, make sure there's nothing blocking the sensor, and also make sure that the guard or the shield that protects the sensors from damage is secure. While you're in this general location as well, you can check item number 2, which is cockpit air intake. It's located just behind the forward cross tube, near the left or the port side of the aircraft, and it's flush with the fuselage. It is a small screened inlet, and we want to make sure that it is clear and unobstructed. Because this aircraft also has an air conditioner unit installed, this inlet, the cockpit air inlet, also is the cabin air inlet. Next, we're going to look at the cockpit door. We want to check for general condition and function. We want to make sure that it is in good shape, it's undamaged, and that it works properly. So I like to apply a little pressure inward on the door with my right hand as I release the handle with my left. We'll allow the door to open. This is a good time as well to check that the sliding window works properly. It should open and close smoothly and uniformly. If there's not enough friction, the window will simply vibrate open and closed in flight, which is no good. If there's too much friction, of course, you'll be unable to open and close the window. Neither is good. We want just the right amount of friction. We also want to check the hinges to make sure there's no cracking on the door side or on the airframe side. The next item is the upper windscreen area. So we're simply looking for general condition and security here to make sure the windscreen's undamaged, clean, and no obstructions. While you're here, it's also a good opportunity to take a look at the windshield wiper. We'll look at it later, but this is a good vantage point to take a peek at the top of the windshield wiper. As we climb down, let's take a moment to look inside the aircraft to make sure the battery master switch is in the off position. Next, let's look at the landing gear and step. There are several things here we want to pay close attention to. Of course, the cross tube for condition, make sure it's not damaged, not dented, no machine marks on it. The cross tube attaches to the airframe just here. We want to make sure that the bolts are secure, in good repair. There's a rubber bushing in that area. And you want to make sure that bushing is central and not displaced. You don't have bulges or avulsions on either side, because that could be indication that the landing gear has shifted. We want to make sure the step is in good repair, again, undamaged, secure. As we move down to the fitting where the cross tube connects to the skid tube, I call it a foot, make sure that that fitting is undamaged. And finally, there will be 4 bolts which hold 4 bands which actually hold the skid tube in place. Again, condition and security in this area. Take a little bit of time, make sure there's no cracking. As we move rearward, we find ourselves at the aft cross tube. In addition to the items we checked on the forward cross tube, we also want to check the rear view camera on this aircraft to make sure the assembly itself is secure and that the cabling which attaches the camera system to the airframe is secure. This is also a good opportunity to check the 3 drain ports to make sure that they're clear, unobstructed, and that there's no fluid dripping from them. Next, we'll check the condition and security of any antennas which may be located on the underside of the aircraft or which may be located on the roof of the aircraft. Again, just general condition and security of the antennas. While we're here as well, we're going to check the right-hand cowlings for condition, security, make sure they're undamaged. Now check to ensure the avionic cooling bay vent is clear and unobstructed. Before opening the sliding door, make absolutely certain that the maintenance steps are closed, because the maintenance steps are an impediment to the sliding door. In other words, if you open the sliding door and the maintenance steps are open, the door will impact the steps. This is why you will notice the perimeter of the maintenance steps have an orange decal, a very contrasting orange decal, so that they're highly visible. Next, let's check the sliding door. We want to check it for condition and function. So just its overall general condition, again, no damage. I like to check the window seal to make sure it's in place properly. The window is clean. Just as the pilot door, I like to push in a little bit on the door as I rotate the handle. It makes the handle smoother and easier to operate. We'll open the door. As it opens, it should move smoothly and evenly. The resistance should be smooth and even on the rail. And we'll leave the door in the open position for now. Next, we're going to check the engine oil cooler inlet area, paying special attention to the inlet screen, the fan itself. In general, make sure there's no debris or any foreign objects which may be drawn into the oil cooler area. Now we can close the sliding door on the right-hand side of the aircraft. Now let's open the transmission access door on the right-hand side of the aircraft. You may notice that this door looks a little different than yours. It is because this ship is configured with a hoist on the right-hand side of the aircraft. It has the fixed provisions for the hoist, which requires the door to be slightly smaller. So let's go ahead and open the door and take a look inside. Once we have the door open, we should just look in the general area for no foreign objects, for any leakage, any fluid. It should be clear and clean and dry here. Let's check the oil cooler inlet duct. Make sure it's clear, no debris. The oil cooler itself, for general condition, no damage, no leakage. The oil cooler outlet duct, again on the back side of the cooler to make sure that air can flow through the cooler itself unobstructed. Next, the hydraulic pressure supply for system number 2 can be checked for condition. The fluid level indicator, check that the fluid is between the min and the max line. The sight glass to check oil is visible, that air fills less than half of the sight glass. So again, it may be completely filled with oil, but it must be at least half filled with oil. The transmission oil filter clogging indicator pin, check to make sure it is flush with the housing, that the little red button is not popped open or up. The transmission oil level itself, make sure that it is between the min and the max line. And finally, that the generator air intake is clear. You may need a mirror and a light to see this area well. I often use my hand and feel into that area to make sure it is clear and unobstructed. Either way works. Now we can close the access door and secure it. Next, we find ourselves at the engine access door on the right-hand side of the aircraft. Because this ship is equipped with an inlet barrier filter, the configuration may look slightly different than yours. We have to reference the flight manual supplement for the inlet barrier filter to complete the pre-flight. It says inlet barrier filter element, check condition, unobstructed. The drain hole condition, unobstructed. The pressure port condition, unobstructed. And the inlet barrier filter pressure lines. Now, we cannot see these until we open a panel. We'll see those in just a moment. But finally, from the outside, we can see the oil cooler outlet and ensure that it is in good condition and unobstructed. So let's go ahead and open the doors and take a look inside. Let's begin now in the forward engine access area. We want to check the general condition and security of the wires, lines, pipes, fittings, cannon plugs, all of that. We want it to be clean and dry with no debris, no foreign objects here. This is also a time where we can check the number 2 engine oil level. Of course, it should be between the min and the max line. The engine drive shaft. Pay particular attention here. I recommend you rotate the shaft one direction, and when you do so, it should turn freely, and the main rotor blades should not turn. And this is a time where you can check the circumference of the shaft itself for tooling marks, for any damage, anything like that. You don't want any damage on this drive shaft. You'll notice that there are some bolts which hold the shaft to the engine output flange. Make sure these bolts are in good position, they're secure, and the slippage marks are intact. Also, you'll see a little bit of a diaphragm, or the outside, the radius of that shaft. You want to make sure that is constant as you rotate it. In other words, the shaft has not been twisted or bent in any way. And then we can rotate it the other direction just a little bit, and you will feel much more resistance as you roll it that direction, and you will notice that the main rotor blades do turn. While not called out in the current pre-flight checklist, I recommend taking a few extra moments on the Safran-powered H135s to ensure the engine oil and fuel filter clogging pins are not extended. They should be flush within their respective housings. And finally, we want to make sure the NACA inlet above is unobstructed. Now we can shut the forward access door and move to the aft door. We're now at the aft engine access door on the right-hand side of the aircraft. And just like we did before, we want to check inside for general condition and security, cleanliness, no foreign objects, no debris, no fluid. Additionally, in this area, we can see the IBF pressure line. We want to check that to make sure that is clean, clear, unobstructed, not kinked, anything like that. And once we're finished here, we can shut this panel, secure it, and move on. Inside the EPU door, we will find the actual EPU receptacle, an external power circuit breaker, and a headset intercom jack. Prior to inserting the EPU plug, please ensure that the aircraft battery is in the on position and the EPU plug itself is energized. After you are finished using the EPU, it should remain powered until after you remove the plug from the aircraft. So let's look inside the battery compartment door. The battery is located here. I reach in, I feel the battery itself, the top of the battery, there's a threaded rod at the front and the back holding a clamp which holds the battery into position. So I ensure that the nuts are tight there, that there's a diaper pin on each nut holding them in position. I then shake the battery or attempt to shake the battery to make sure it is secure. Then I check the battery connector to make sure it's seated well. Also the battery temperature probe connector to make sure it's seated well. This is a great opportunity to check the vent screens. There are two located in the overhead cowling. They should be clear and unobstructed. It's also a wonderful opportunity to check the general cleanliness and condition of the area, to include items such as the forward portion of the tail boom attach frame, the aft portion of the engine firewalls, the decking. Again, cleanliness, condition, no foreign objects, no fluids. Just below the battery door, we have two static ports. We want to make sure they're clear and unobstructed. Just behind that, we have a small opening where we can see the fire bottle and the fire bottle pressure indication. We want to look at that pressure indication, compare that with the outside air temperature, and look at this placard to determine if the bottle is properly pressurized. Additionally, just above here, we have the engine exhaust pipe for the number 2 engine. We want to make sure it is in good condition, undamaged, secure, free of foreign objects. And it's also a great time, if you'd like, to look at the power turbine on the number 2 engine. You can shine a light and look forward and see the actual power turbine, all to confirm it's clear and free of obstructions. Now we will check the condition and function of the clamshell doors. They're held closed with 2 latches, one here and one here. But before releasing the latches, ensure that the external portion of the doors are undamaged and clean. Then, to release the doors, the latches work like this. Just pull the latch, they open. Each door has a pneumatic strut which will hold them open in place. Once they're open, check the door hinge attachment hardware on the internal portion of the door. Check the panel itself, the window, the door seal, just general condition and security of the door. Also, we have an avionics rack here in the overhead up here. We want to make sure that it is shut and the pins are both in position to hold that rack in place. Before we shut the doors, we want to check to make sure the first aid kit is present and that it is current in date. and that the tamper-proof seal is unbroken, which indicates to us that all the contents are present. And finally, before shutting the doors, I ensure there's nothing on the deck, on the floor of the aircraft, which could be extending out, which could become an impediment to either shutting the doors or could damage the aircraft in flight. So again, make sure there's nothing on the floor hanging out. I push the doors together uniformly. I shut the bottom latch first. I close the latch. I close the second latch. Confirm that it's secure and uniform. Then last, I will check the external portion of the hinges to make sure the airframe portion of the hinge are intact and in good shape, no cracks. Top and bottom, the clamshell door portion of the hinge, and finally the pins or the bolts to make sure they're in position and secure. Once we're comfortable that that is complete, we can move on to the tail boom. Let's continue our pre-flight check at the right side of the tail boom. We want to look very closely at the tail boom structure itself for any potential defects or deformity, dents, scratches, things like that. So look carefully, take your time here. I also look closely at the cam locks, which hold the tail rotor drive shaft cover in place to make sure they're seated correctly. The antennas, so the VOR antennas on either side, the attachment of those, and that the drain holes or the weep holes at the base of the antenna mount are opened to allow moisture to escape. The inspection panel secure. Of course, the rad out, the radar altimeter antenna is secure with the respective drain holes unobstructed. As we come back to the horizontal stabilizer, we want to make sure the attached bolt is tight, secure, and the sealant is applied. We come further aft to the bottom of the tail boom, and there is a drain hole here. We want to make sure that drain hole is clear and unobstructed. And finally, the fenestron, the lower portion of the fenestron just here, we have a camera, a forward-facing camera. We want to make sure it is secure and clean. Before leaving this area, I come out to the end of the horizontal stabilizer. Traditionally, I will grasp the leading edge and the trailing edge, and I will gently shake the aircraft, shake the stabilizer, to make sure the stabilizer is securely attached. Also, looking at the position light to make sure it is attached correctly and the lens is clear and secure. And before leaving this area, I always take a few extra moments to look above, down the length of the horizontal stabilizer, because this is a prime location for people to innocently leave things like flashlights, ink pens, tools, screwdrivers, and forget they're there. I'm 5'10", and I can't see on top of that unless I stand on my tiptoes to look. So please take a few extra minutes, look carefully on this surface for any potential FOD. Now we're at the fenestron. Let's take time to look at the fenestron in its entirety for the condition of it. We don't want any damage. We want it to be clean, no dents, no dings. Also, we were going to check each of the tail rotor blades individually. I check them by running my hand down the leading edge and trailing edge of the blades, the back and the front of the blades. And because I'm not very tall, it's very easy for me just to rotate the tail rotor gently and slowly so I can check each blade well. I can see it well, I can check it tactily well, but I can also visualize it well. So again, it's permissible to rotate the tail rotor to put the tail rotor blades in a position where it's comfortable and easy to do a good pre-flight check. Once we've checked the tail rotor blades individually, we want to check that the hub and the tail rotor assembly is central in the fenestron itself so that the gap between the blade tips and the fenestron is uniform throughout the entire radius of the opening. We also want to ensure that the tail rotor fairing is secure and not rotating within the tail rotor hub. So there is a slippage mark located on the fairing itself and a slippage mark on the hub. We want to make sure those marks are in alignment, which indicates to us that there is no slippage, that the fairing is properly installed. Before leaving this area, let's look closely at the ring frame. This assembly is what connects the tail boom to the fenestron. It's attached with rivets. I like to use my hands and my eyes as I carefully check the condition of this assembly. And while no cracks are allowed, tiny cracks in the paint are okay. But if you have any doubt about the cracks, please contact maintenance to ensure that it is in correct condition for flight. Before we finish our check on this side of the fenestron, we want to look to the top, to the tip cap, and ensure that it is in place, secure, that the screws are all there. Also, the anti-collision light and the aft position light are present and intact. And finally, we check the condition of the tail bumper. We've now completed the pre-flight checks on the right-hand side of the helicopter. And as we come around the back of the aircraft to station number 2, we're beginning on the left-hand side by the fenestron at station 2. You will note that many of the items on the left-hand side of the helicopter are replications of components or items on the right-hand side. So in such cases, we will not go into a detailed explanation examining the condition of these items. We'll simply mention them and then move on. So we can begin here at the tail rotor. The checklist says vertical fin tip left-hand side. Again, the same as the right-hand side, different perspective, but we're looking for the same condition and security. The ring frame, again, we've already checked that, but you want to check on this side just as we did on the other side. A new item on this side are the stators. There are 10 stators which hold the tail rotor gearbox assembly in place in the center of the fenestron. We want to carefully check each stator, all 10 of them, for condition and security. Next, we have tail rotor gearbox, condition, no leakage, and oil level. It will take a flashlight typically to be able to see up into this lower grid to see the oil level and general condition and security, no leaks. It will take a flashlight in this lower grid typically. The oil filler cap, it is visible. It may be a little more visible to look in through the top grid. It may be seen through the bottom one, but you may need to look through the top grid to get a little better vantage point. The tail rotor gearbox cover, that's this assembly here. We want to make sure it is well seated and each of the cam locks are in position correctly and it's secure. As we move forward, we will check the horizontal stabilizer, position light, the left-hand side of the tail boom, including the access panel and the 2 antennae. As we continue forward on the left-hand side of the helicopter, we find ourselves under the number 1 engine exhaust pipe. Below that, we have the 2 static ports. And between the two, we have something unique on the left-hand side of this helicopter. These are the condenser fan assemblies and grids. We want to ensure that they are clear and unobstructed. I like to use a flashlight to look inside the grid so I can see the actual fan blade and the condensers themselves. After opening the number 1 engine access doors on the left-hand side of the helicopter, it gives us an opportunity to see the engine, just like we did on the right-hand side. But the exception will be we're now looking at the left-hand side of the number 1 engine, while before we were looking at the right-hand side of the number 2 engine. We're still looking for the condition, security, no leakage, no foreign objects in the engine compartment, the wiring, the linkages, lines, etc. So just take a few minutes, use your light, your eyes, and your hands, and do a good check in this area. So as we look in the forward engine door, again, everything I said previously still stands. Take your time, general condition and security, use your hands, your eyes, your light. This is where we'll also find the engine oil level for the number one engine, so ensure that the oil level is between the min and the max line. And once again, take your time, look closely. After opening the transmission access door on the left side of the helicopter, we can continue our pre-flight checks. We're basically looking at the same items on the left side of the aircraft as we did on the right, with two notable exceptions. Number one, this aircraft is configured with a rotor brake. So we must check the rotor brake reservoir fluid level, make sure the reservoir is secure, the cap is properly seated, and again, that the fluid level is correct. Additionally, we need to check the swash plate sliding sleeve bushing, the lower part, for proper condition and no shift. So while it is visible here, it's a little bit easier to see from the right-hand side of the aircraft, but what we're checking for is that bushing is slightly recessed into the sleeve, approximately 2 millimeters. So again, you're likely going to need at least a flashlight, maybe a flashlight and a mirror, but take your time, look there closely, and ensure that that bushing is properly seated and it has not shifted. So that's all there is for us to look at here, which is in addition to what we looked at on the right-hand side. So we can go ahead and close this compartment door and move on up to the rotor system. Let's go ahead and begin our checks in the main rotor area. The first item is swash plate. We want to check the general condition of the swash plate. Again, I use a flashlight, I use my hands, I check the bolts, the cotter keys, the safety wire. Again, just general condition and security. Take your time. The area should be relatively clean, no visible damage on any of the components, no machine marks or no indication of scratches or other damage, mechanical damage. We want to go ahead now and look at the swash plate sliding sleeve. The sliding sleeve, you may remember when we were looking at the bottom part or the lower part of the sliding sleeve, it should have been installed so that the Teflon bushing had 2 millimeters, it was 2 millimeters recessed into the sleeve. Well, on the top part, we should ensure that the Teflon bushing is flush with the sliding sleeve. So in this case, it is flush, and this particular helicopter has a thin coat of sealant sealing the top of that bushing. So your aircraft may or may not have that sealant, but in either case, that sliding sleeve should be flush on the upper part. Keep in mind that the upper and lower bushings are not connected. You must not assume that because one is in the correct position, the other is as well. While we're here, we can also look at the control rods, the 4 control rods. We want to ensure that the control rods are free to rotate, that the bearings on the upper portion, the portion that connects to the blades, and the lower portion, the portion which connects to the rotating swash plate, are in good condition. We want to make sure the hardware which connects them is tight and safetied. Additionally, you will see that the top jam nut on the control rod has sealant around it. That is to keep moisture from going down the barrel, but the bottom of the control rods do not have sealant. So I check that, I rotate the rotor system, I rotate the blades, and I check all 4 of those. While doing so, I also check the control links and make sure that the drive links are in good repair, and again, that they are undamaged. So both drive link assemblies take time to ensure they're in good order as well. As we move up the mast to the blade attach area of the mast, we have the upper blade attach area and the lower blade attach area. We want to check them closely for the condition. There should be no cracking, no deep gouges or scratches or tooling marks. Additionally, while we're in this area, there's a good opportunity to check the 8 main rotor attach bolts. In this case, we have 6 bolts because we have a blade folding kit, so 2 of the bolts are replaced with this pin, this blade folding pin. So we want to check the 6 bolts are correctly installed and secured, that the 2 diaper pins or the 2 securing pins are in place for each of those 6 bolts, and that the blade fold attach pin is secure with a securing pin as well. There's another opportunity here to take a close look at the bonding braid, which connects from the main rotor blade cuff to the top of the main rotor mast itself. And so that I can check all this closely, what I do is I check an area, this whole entire area, then I rotate the rotor system, check again the entire area, rotate the rotor system, check again, and then finally one more rotation and check it all. Because I do want to take a close look in this area. Now we want to look down each main rotor blade control cuff. We want to look down the inside of them as far as possible to ensure there's no foreign objects or any debris inside the control cuffs. So we'll do that for all 4 blades. Now we want to check the condition and security of the 8 main rotor blade dampers. There's one located on the bottom cuff of each blade and one located on the top of each blade. So we'll check each one of them individually for condition and security. We want to make sure that there are no cracks or any defects in the material. They are an elastomeric material, so we don't want any avulsions or any cracking. So take care to look at the bottom and the top of all 4 blades. Now we'll check each of the 4 main rotor blade cuffs. I like to run my hand down the trailing edge, feeling the top of the blade, the trailing edge, the bottom as I look. So I'm looking and feeling, ensure the drain holes are clear, no foreign objects here. I come up on the leading edge, run my hand down the leading edge. Again, looking just for general condition of the cuff. While we're in this area, it's a good opportunity to ensure that this cover, which covers the blade weights, it's used to balance the main rotor system. This cover is designed to protect those. So again, it should be secure with a castellated nut and a cotter key. So take a moment, check each one of those 4 as well. We'll now check each of the 4 main rotor blades. We want to check the condition of the blade, the leading edge, trailing edge, top, bottom. We'll turn the rotor so that we can look at each blade. We want to check free turning of the rotor system. While doing so, we'll check the PU erosion protective film on the blades. We want to ensure it's in good condition. There's no separation, no bubbling, just general condition of that film. Now we'll check the general condition and security of the main rotor hubcap. As we rotate the blades, check the general condition all the way around the hubcap and the security by the attachment bolts. Ensure they're all tight and the hubcap is secure. We also want to look at the underside of each blade, keeping in mind this is not a detailed maintenance inspection, but rather we're checking the general condition of the blades. So looking at the trailing edge, the underside, the leading edge, paying special attention to the trim tabs on the trailing edge near the end of each blade and the static wick near the end of each blade on the trailing edge. As we continue on the left side of the helicopter, of course, we want to ensure that the 3 maintenance steps are closed. Additionally, the cowlings, the antennas, oil cooler fan inlet screen, All of these should be checked for condition as well, just like we did on the right-hand side of the helicopter. But a new item on this side is the fuel filler cap. It's located just inside the fuel door, so we'll need a key to open the door. Once we open the door, we can check that the cap is secure. Then we shut the door, lock it, remove the key, and now we'll continue on. As we continue on the left side of the helicopter, we want to ensure that the drain ports located just aft of the aft cross tube are clear in the same way that we checked on the right-hand side. We also want to check the condition and security of the landing gear and step, just as we did on the right-hand side. We do have two additional items here. We have two vents we want to ensure are clear. Near them are two antennas. We want to ensure they are secure and in good condition. Also, the fuselage underside, we want to check that to ensure it's clean and in good repair, its condition. The sliding door, just as we did on the right side, we want to ensure its correct function, its condition. Now we'll check the cockpit door on the left side. We want to check for condition, security, function, just like we did on the right-hand side of the helicopter. We will also check the upper part of the windscreen on the left-hand side, again, just like we did on the right side. But something which is different now, the co-pilot safety belts must be fastened and secured if there is not to be a passenger or a person in the left-hand front seat. While we're in this area, it's a great opportunity to check the upper wire strike protection system cutter. Again, just general condition and security. All the hardware is intact and it's undamaged. We've now arrived at the last station, the nose area. We will begin here by checking the windscreens, the forward portion and the lower portion of each windscreen for condition and cleanliness. We will check the pitot tubes, both the left pitot tube and the right pitot tube, for condition, security, and to ensure that they are clear and unobstructed. Then we will check that the windshield wiper is in good condition and securely attached. We will also check the nose windows, both on the right and the left side, again for condition and cleanliness. This provides a great opportunity to see into the pedal area to ensure there's no foreign objects or debris here. We will also check the landing light for condition security. And if we kneel a bit here, we can look under the front of the aircraft to ensure this area is undamaged and in good condition, as well as the searchlight is undamaged in good condition. And finally, we will check the lower wire strike cutter for its condition and security. And that completes our pre-flight check. This completes the exterior portion of the pre-flight check. Of course, any questions or concerns should be addressed before continuing. Once you are satisfied that the helicopter is in airworthy condition, return the flashlight and other items used, wash your hands, finalize any required paperwork, and move the helicopter outside where you can complete the interior checks and go fly. For me, a thorough pre-flight is more than a required step to achieving a successful flight. It also provides me comfort knowing that I've done my part to ensure that the helicopter is safe for flight. And finally, this video was filmed near an active flight line at our Airbus facility in Donauwörth, Germany. Hopefully, the sights and sounds we all love were not too distracting. Until next time, resume on navigation.